Assalamu alaikum. I mean, it's a great honor for me. I mean, to see coming on the weekend, the physician and people are following me online. I mean, when I'm here, I'm not sure. I've been called to give a talk in a neurology conference for the stroke. I mean, don't take a stroke easy, okay? Since I'm an electrophysiologist, I deal with arrhythmias. And you know, 1/3 of the stroke, people even don't know why they have a stroke. This is called cryptogenic stroke. And one of the reasons is atrial fibrillation. You can find patient in sinus rhythm and they may present with debilitating stroke. They're not hypertensive, they're not diabetic, they're not smoker, okay? Many times patients may have a PFO. I remember when in US, I used to get call every time from neurology. I'm surprised with the Jinnah Hospital. No one calls us with a young patient with stroke. That was a routine consultation. And when you see anybody with a young patient coming with a stroke, they will call a cardiologist. And we have to do transesophageal echo to find a small hole in PFO. And they can cause paradoxical embolism. Okay, I'm surprised. I mean, I never get called for young patient with stroke. I don't know what they do with them. Okay, so most of the thing is just the atrial fibrillation. So atrial fibrillation is the commonest arrhythmia in the world as you grow older. So as a cardiologist, oh, I have to rule out a patient does not have AFib, and this patient may be in sinus rhythm, and still they can go into paroxysmal AF. And the problem with atrial fibrillation and stroke, they get the worst stroke. If you see somebody with severe debilitating stroke, you must think this must be ischemic and through thromboembolism. So with AF, it's the worst type of stroke and most debilitating. It's a very challenge to pick up those patients. Now we have special monitors like implantable loop recorder. We can put in the patients, it record for the whole year. It's not like Apple Watch, okay? And we can catch patient if they go into AFib, so we can anticoagulate them and we can protect them. Those patients whom you can't anticoagulate, you put a device. What you do, you tie their left atrial appendage so the clot doesn't go out. So there's so many advances. The other latest treatment is just ablate the origin of the pulmonary vein. It's a 3-hour procedure. And you get rid of atrial fibrillation. So before I proceed my talk, I thought as a cardiologist, I wanted to tell my perspective. So as you know, the risk factors for stroke is the same as a cardiologist. So it makes sense why they call me. You have to know as you grow older, the risk of stroke is highest, okay? And the same thing is with hypertension. These, I won't call them disease. These are age-related changes in the body, okay? Your arteries become hard as you grow older, okay? And they need more blood to pump. So male, of course, I mean, at older age, both are at equal risk, but of course, male are at higher risk. Then different races like African American in the US is a big problem. And they have more coming with debilitating stroke because uncontrolled hypertension, many other reasons. And if somebody had MI, so you mean they have the same risk factor for peripheral vascular disease and for stroke, okay? And of course, it runs in hereditary. So you have to know somebody, young patient in the family got a stroke. And there are many other hypercoagulable conditions. Their cholesterol is fine. They don't have blood pressure. They don't have diabetes, but they have hypercoagulable status. I mean, the blood is thick. How you can find out? Just a simple history. If there is a female, if you ask them if they have recurrent abortions, it means they have risk for stroke too. Okay, the risk for young MIs. Very simple questions. You ask the family history, young people having a stroke or heart disease. If a female asks the childbirth history, if they get recurrent abortions, you know they have a problem with the blood. People can have hyperhomocystinemia. Patient can have coagulation disorders just by history. Of course, smoking, hypertension. We are going to talk about a lot of controversy in hypertension. I hope I don't get you confused because the whole world is confused about hypertension. They could not even define what is hypertension. So we'll talk about it. So risk factors, as you know, I mean, I already discussed about if you have hypertension, you have heart disease, you're in heart failure, you have atrial fibrillation, all these, and AF you can see is really the most troublesome and most debilitating cause of stroke. So now discussion, my overview, I was trying to think about it. What is a recent ACC-AHA guideline? We have JNC 6, JNC 7, JNC 8. Assalamu alaikum, my class fellow, Dr. Iftikhar. I respect him a lot. He's serving a lot for religion and doing a lot of services for in our country, going to villages, convincing them, and is sitting here after I'm seeing 40 years. He have been my class fellow. Hello, Iftihar, good to see you. Okay, that's a big surprise for me, okay, and honor. Okay. And now, so people are confused. Gen Z 6 said something else, Gen Z 7, Gen Z 8 came after 10 years. People, all the cardiologists, neurologists, they were fighting. They cannot tell what is hypertension. So every time they said above 65, it's a different approach. Less than 65, it should be a different approach. You should not be too aggressive. If you are older age, they have a lot of data against it. So how did we get here? Where are we going? What's the risk-based treatment evidence? When we talk about anything, we have to prove it evidence. We can't say this is what you believe in. So this is the best slide. I can make it very simple. As a childhood, as a medical student, we knew that you have a normotensive, your blood pressure is 120/80. It's still valid now. If somebody's blood pressure is less than 120, less than, not 120, 120, you can be elevated blood pressure. Your blood pressure normal is less than 120, less than 80. Just remember by heart. Now what Americans did, they said if your blood pressure is more than 120, you are called pre-hypertensive. This was old concept. But they changed, they gave a different name. They said, if you're above 120 and between 120 and 130, then you have elevated blood pressure. They won't call it pre-hypertension. So what you have to remember, what's the normal blood pressure? Less than 120, 180, and less than 80. What is elevated blood pressure? If somebody comes with blood pressure 123 and 75, you'll tell them you have elevated blood pressure. You won't label them hypertensive. But if they touch 130 or if they touch 80 or crosses 80, they are labeled as hypertensive. This is very lower number. Before it was more than 140 over 90. Now they are saying if you're 130 or above, 80 or above, you're hypertensive. This is a big, big news for the whole world. And at that terminology, about 31 million Americans are labeled hypertensive. Even people who thought they are normotensive, they are labeled as hypertensive because they changed the number. So the whole email, media, and even the medical doctors in the US did not accept this number. He said half of the population will be hypertensive. In short, all over the world, every fourth person is hypertensive. Okay? So you have to know, every 1 out of 4 is hypertensive. And stage 2 is more than 140. European, I didn't put it European guideline because it will be more confusing for you. What they say, if you're 140 and above, you're hypertensive, stage 1, and you're above 160, stage 2. So they were less aggressive in their definition. But I will keep you to ACC guideline because most of the people are now agreeing to this. So if you are more than 130, you're hypertensive. More than 140, you are stage 2. According to European, you're stage 1. But don't get worried about the lower number. Why? Because the person who did this study, actually, I went through his talk. Okay, I think I finished listening to him at 4 in the morning. Sorry. So I luckily found out what his impression, how he defended himself, redefining hypertension when the whole world did not accept it. His answer was very simple. What he's saying here, you look at the green one, elevated blood pressure. He's not saying that you have elevated blood pressure, you have to start medicine. It's just awareness. It means you have to non-pharmacological, you change your lifestyle. Okay, start walking, watch your diet. He's not saying that I have labeled you elevated blood pressure and I'm giving you medicine. That's not, okay? So it's like a cancer, like stage 1, you have to catch it, okay? And you can prevent stage 1. And most of the time, physicians catch them when they have MI, when they have a stroke, when they have LVH, when they have proteinuria, when the creatinine went up. With this approach, we are all alert now. We alarm the patient. It's just alarming sign that we are labeling you hypertensive or you have elevated blood pressure. Even you look at this number, even if your blood pressure is between 130 to 139, they are not recommending treatment. Okay. I think that's the best explanation. Okay. So we are labeling you are hypertensive. It's in your hand now. Cut down your salt, start exercising. Okay. Watch your diet, watch your weight. Okay. Change your lifestyle. So this so amazing explanation. Okay. We are not pushing anybody to give a medicine, even if they are stage 1. Okay. In stage 2, of course. Okay. Here, now they can have end organ damage because everyone agrees above 140 is hypertensive. European says you are stage 1. American stage saying you are stage 2, but Americans are starting treatment at stage 2, but they are awareing the whole world at stage 1. Okay, so that makes sense. You don't want to catch people with coming with left ventricular hypertrophy, okay, and proteinuria, because it's a silent killer. Okay, only way you can tell if somebody has high blood pressure. Okay, so as a physician, I can warn them, you are prone risk. As you grow older, okay, you will be hypertensive anyway. Why don't you start watching, changing your lifestyle? Okay, but very interesting what they said. Even if your blood pressure is between 130 to 139, you can be dangerous. Why? Because you already has a coronary heart disease. You already had a stent, you had already had MI, you already had heart failure. Your heart is already damaged. If you are diabetic, if you have chronic kidney disease, diabetic means you have ischemic heart disease. Chronic kidney disease means your other organs are damaged, okay? Because endothelium is one, which supplies the whole thing. So if you have any of these major risk factors, then you have to start that treatment. So make it clear. If you see a patient with major risk factors, touching 130, your goal should be keep their blood pressure less than 130. Okay? So they explain the whole world so nicely. Okay? No one can argue now. Okay? Somebody is coming with a big gun. You can't just sit quiet. Okay? You have to take action. Okay? Even if their blood pressure is 130, I have to be more aggressive. But somebody whose blood pressure 135, he's benign. I will warn him. Okay? So target of blood pressure is less than 130. Okay? It is, it should be reasonable, even if you don't have risk factors. But if you want to be aggressive with these patients, the data supports it. But they're not recommending. It is okay. You can keep a patient blood pressure less than 130. That's fine. Okay? By non-pharmacological therapy or by pharmacology. But pharmacological therapy is not first stage. I hope you're getting at the point. I'm not making it too confused. All right. So how did we get here? Why 130? Why not 140? I will tell you now. The first trial that was done in 1990, in 80s maybe, was the SHEP trial, systolic hypertension. At that time, it was a concept, as you are older, your blood pressure should be high because your brain needs blood, okay? So it's good for the elderly patients to keep their blood pressure above 160. That was the whole concept. So people were not treating elderly patients. The SHEP trial said that systolic hypertension is dangerous in elderly patients, not the diastolic. Diastolic and systolic both are dangerous in middle age. But as you grow older, systolic hypertension. The SHEP trial, systolic hypertension in elderly patient. Okay. Then systolic, European did the study. SHEP was a Chinese study. Then HIVET was in Middle East and the other European countries. So they did all the trials in elderly population. I will talk about it. Then there's a group of patients with chronic kidney disease, what their blood pressure should be. So ASK trial, okay? These were the patient whose creatinine was high. They have proteinuria, okay? And they did the trials, okay, on these patients. ACCORD trial was a trial done on diabetics, okay? So we already have a data on patients, elderly patients. We have a data on patient with kidney disease. We have data patient with diabetes, and the SPRINT trial. We have data with patient with ischemic heart disease. So we covered all the major highest risk group. Okay. So now let's talk about the high risk population. So this was a SHEP trial I told you about. They were more than 60 years and their blood pressure were above 160 to 219. So they took really hypertensive patients, systolic hypertension. And there were two arms. The treated arm where blood pressure was 143 and placebo was 155. What they found, it was a remarkable study. First study said 36% reduction in stroke if your blood pressure is below 150. Okay? The whole world agreed now that your blood pressure should be less than 150. There was no doubts about it. So everyone agreed after this trial. They learned that you are safely, with fewer side effects of the drug, you can bring their blood pressure less than 150 in elderly patient. Okay? These were 60 above. All right? And they did not, people were concerned elderly patient may have orthostatic hypotension, they have autonomic dysfunction. So you avoid diuretics and other alpha blockers they are on. So orthostatic hypertension was reported in 24%, which is a good number. Okay. 1/4 can have orthostatic hypertension. 3% reported syncope because of side effect of the drug. Okay. At that time, they used diuretic. Okay. Chlorthalidone was used in this trial. Okay. So that was a reason because they were giving diuretic. Now, HIVET trial, I skipped the European systolic hypertension trial. HIVET is very interesting. They took patient at least 80-year-old. They took very elderly. Okay. And again, the treated patient's blood pressure was 145 and placebo was above 150. They found again 30% reduction in stroke. Okay. So they reconfirm the finding of systolic hypertension. These are latest trials. Okay. And that trial was, I'm talking about 25, 30 years ago. So we have now strong data in elderly. So what we learned from all these elderly trials, the treatment to systolic blood pressure less than 150 is a beneficial compared to higher levels. You got the point here? So elderly patients' blood pressure should be less than 150. I showed you all the evidence. Now come to kidney disease. Nephrologists, sometimes they don't think that lowering the blood pressure may be effective. So they took African American because they are the one mostly affected with chronic kidney disease because they are not taking medicine. Even in US, okay, people are biased giving medicine to the blacks. They're in poor economic conditions. They talk about equality and justice. Even Africans, Americans are not treated as white, okay? Even in that type of world where people say they are very balanced society and, okay? So they are affected. You will see African American coming with stroke, on dialysis. They're obese. They don't have jobs. They may be lazy. I'm not saying that, okay? But there may be other reasons to it. So main outcome was they already has 50% of the time and they have end-stage renal disease and death. So they wanted to see what happens, the progression of the disease. So there were two goals. The lower goal was blood pressure less than 125 and hypertension was 140. Oh, okay. All right. So what they found, lower was better. And what they found, ACE inhibitor was better than all the other drugs. Okay. So again, ACE inhibitor was a biggest puller. So now coming about ACCORD trial in diabetic, they less than 120 or less than 140. They came out less than 120 was more beneficial. So we have all the data. Now coming SPRINT trial, they changed the whole world. They look into patient less than 120 or less than 140. And they took patient with cardiac patients, okay, like my patients who had MI, heart failure, coronary disease. You see the difference in mortality. Amazing difference, okay? And these were the patients whose blood pressure was less than 130. The whole world changed. Now, you know, they have better outcome. They have less stroke, okay? So they showed that less than 120 was favorable. And you can see here the treatment better or treatment worse. Everything was in favor. whether you're female, whether you're male, whether you're black, whether you are coronary artery disease, whether you have chronic kidney disease, everyone benefited from intensive blood pressure goal. Now, coming into where we are going. So they said, American, don't just look at the blood pressure, you have to look at the cholesterol too. So before it was a target LDL. Now they said, no, you can't target the LDL. You have to put the patient's data in this format. What's the age? What's the systolic hypertension? What's the LDL? What's the cholesterol? What's the HDL? And you see the risk. If the risk is more than 5%, give them statin, even if their cholesterol is low. If the risk is more than 15%, give them high intensity statin. Okay? So you have to put your data into this format, ASCVD risk calculator. That will tell you the patient should be on statin or not. And you can see even patients with the same number of blood pressure, 110, if they have other risk factors, the risk is high. So it's not the number. Same number in a patient with risk factors, the mortality goes up. Now, so I think I gave you the message because I've been warned that we have only 5 minutes. Even dementia showed in elderly beneficial, okay? Less blood pressure. So recommendation, any blood pressure medicine is good as a first line, except beta blockers. You can give thiazide, calcium channel blocker, ACE or ARB. Beta blocker, if they have heart disease, heart failure, MI, angina, then you can give. So even the guideline with hypertension, they tell you that you can use any medicine. These are all latest guidelines. What type of diet? Mediterranean diet and DASH diet. Okay. So all the stroke, what they are telling you, if the blood pressure is less than 130, less chance of stroke. Amazing data on stroke prevention, less than 130. So, so we have latest trial a month ago, published in New England Journal. Everything is favoring. What the answer is, you have to stand up, start doing physical activity. Watch your diet, okay? What's the diet? DASH diet, Mediterranean diet, fish, okay? Fruits, vegetable, low in salt, no bakery products, please. Don't go to bakeries, okay? Milk products, they're all harmful. Low salt, okay? Fish, poultry, vegetable. Now this was another trial, was a HOPE-3. This is also same. I don't want to overweight, control your diabetes, control your weight, quit smoking. If you have AFib, you should need to be anticoagulated. You have to start jogging. You have to have a fish, and you can play music to relax yourself. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think a very interesting and very informative talk. In Pakistan, the issues are two, basically. Number one, a lot of people in this country, they are undiagnosed. So what you can do to make them diagnose as high blood pressure, that's one thing. Number two, most of the doctors and the nursing staff, you go to a clinic, they don't know even how to check the blood pressure. They don't know what is actually the blood pressure reading. So I think these are the relevant questions in Pakistan, other than like what you should do with the blood pressure. You know, a lot of people, they come to the clinic, they have high blood pressure, white coat and everything. Should you do ambulatory blood pressure monitoring for population basis? At what age you should check a population basis screening for blood pressure? Because now you have 25, 30 years old with high blood pressure. So what do you think we should do in this country? Number one, to check the right blood pressure. And number two, identify the patients who have high blood pressure, but they are undiagnosed in population, especially rural areas, cities, what we can do to assure that we have the right. And
sure.
Once they have it, we understand that right. They should be treated. Yeah.
Amazing question. Excellent physicians, they know how to prevent a disease. Like me, who is a cardiologist, it's easy to treat the patient because I have to put a stand-up. So that's easy part. So it looks like you have an amazing practice, okay? And you really deal with real life. That tells your experience. You know, these are the hot questions asked by the top people, okay? Only somebody at the highest level can ask this question, okay? It's not a problem in Pakistan. The problem is that how to identify, how to correct blood pressure. So in the clinic, People have learned, if you check the blood pressure in the clinic, it's obsolete. It has no value. So I don't even check my patient's blood pressure. Because my patient, most of the time, they come from a class where they have own blood pressure machine at home. They come with a record or something. I just look into it. I don't even pay attention what the nurses have taken. They may fight with their problem with the parking when they rush. The nurses take, when you take, even after 5 minutes, you check their blood pressure, it will change. It will drop. So office blood pressure is not reliable at all. Okay? If it's high, if it's normal, it's fine. You can't label anybody by checking in the clinic your high blood pressure. You can't treat them. So how to do it? The best thing, you tell the patient to keep a record at home. Okay, that's an expensive way. You can't. How many people can afford a correct device, Android machine at home? That's the only way. Ambulatory BP monitoring is the ideal way. It's expensive. Okay, so that's a real problem. Therefore, my friends in US, they call me, all the cardiologists and Apna, Zahid, why are you talking about so much in NICVD? What are you doing for preventive? But your question, with their support, I'm starting a clinic exactly to answer your question in Azam Basti. I hope the pharmaceutical company will help me out. We'll provide a nurse, doctor to healthy population, free of cost or minimal charge for 10 or 20 rupees. Okay. And we have to screen. Okay. We have to tell them, you have to exercise. We have to open gyms. We have to encourage. And that's the only way. Social media, awareness. There's no other way. Okay. You can't screen the whole population. So preventive cardiology, preventive medicine is nowhere in the world. I think we have to talk about, and drug company, they have no interest because we don't prescribe anything to them. We talk nice to them and we send them home without medicine. So it's no money for nobody. Okay. So this is a community service. I'm going to start and you can help me out and we can open all the small centers. I have a strong support of all the physicians in America. Okay, they called me, the president of Apna called me. They wanted to do this. So financially, they will support me. All of you, anybody's interested in your area, we'll provide a doctor, nurse, and a nutritionist where they can check their weight, blood pressure, awareness, a dietitian. We can help to open the gym and encourage. I'm ready to do that. Okay, excellent.